Hello and welcome to this very special show. I've got the man who had the idea and the man who had the inspiration both. Thomas Friedman wrote the book World is Flat, and of course a few sequels have followed that, and Nandan Nilekani was the man behind his inspiration, and the two gentlemen join me right here. Thank you very much. How have things changed from the world is flat? Is it as flat as it used to be, Tom?
Well, a lot of people asked me, Nandan and I were talking just before we came in, I said, the book came out in 2004, people asked me if I got it right. And I tell them, no, I got it wrong. They say, really? We thought so. What did you get wrong? They ask. The world is so much flatter than I thought. That's the only thing I got wrong. Okay.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
These trends that Nandan and I talked about beginning in 2004 have just intensified and gone to scale.
And intensified with what we've seen in the last 3 years. I mean, practically the world has turned around because of that economic crisis. What do you think has changed towards the flatter part of this?
Well, in some sense, what happened was also a result of the flattening, right? Because everything moved at that pace. And I think it's only brought out the fact that this will require all of us to think of everything very differently. And in some sense, what I do today in India, my job is, I realize that while Bangalore has a lot in common with Boston, a village of Bellandur outside Bangalore has less in common with Bangalore than Bangalore has Boston, and therefore how do we actually make India also more accessible to everybody?
And that's been a challenge?
And that's part of why I do what I do.
And Tom, when you look at this whole economic story, I mean, there are of course political and social shifts that we are seeing as well. But to start with the economic story, will that really be the driver of bringing inclusive growth on the table? That's something that Nandan does, but there's always that big question mark. Is it just a buzzword so far?
No, I don't think it's a buzzword at all. I think what Nandan's working on here in India is essential. One of the things I learned about the flat world is to thrive and succeed in the flat world actually is very simple. You need three things, and if you get these three things right, you'll do great, whether you're a city, a town, a state, or a country. You need to get your governance right. You need to have good governance so your people can connect with the flat world platform. That means good rule of law, good intellectual property laws, things of that nature. Second, you need to get your economic policies right. Obviously, you've got to be able to inspire and be able to take part in this world. And lastly, you need to get your education right. Because if you don't have skilled workers who can be collaborators in the flat world at every different level, you also won't thrive. So you get those three things right, you'll do fine. I think what Nandan's involved in here is working diligently on that governance part, so more and more Indians, not just in Bangalore, but in every town and village, can connect with this opportunity.
That connection has, sort of been sometimes, I would say, partially forced by the entities around it, because it's not natural, and obviously the idea is to bring them part of the larger economic growth. Where do you feel the challenges are? Is it from the governance point of view to bring inclusive growth on the table? Is it from policy in general? Is it from corporations or the individual?
I think inclusive growth is essential because unless you create a society where everybody has access to opportunity, unless you create a society where there's more equity, then you won't have a fair society. And if you don't have a fair society, you won't have a stable society. So it's all connected. And one of the things that I've discovered in the last few months is that lack of identity is a huge part of the divide. Because if there's some person in a village who doesn't have identity which is acknowledged by the state, and that person migrates, for example, and comes to the city, he has no way of getting access to public services, so he's outside. And all the things we talk about, health, education, all that becomes inaccessible. So that's really, so inclusive growth at the end of the day, from what I see, it is about giving every Indian an acknowledged existence and then letting them participate in the fruits of development.
Everybody knows that you've been successful at it, but do you feel that there is always that massive constraint which is about not just willingness, it's the resource crunch, it's everybody's conviction that this can be delivered? Because you're at the moment the mascot of the doer in the government. It's not been true about the Indian government in general.
No, I think certainly my experience, I can say that there's a huge amount of government support from the Prime Minister, from the political establishment, and I really have no complaints. I've had a very good run.
Sure.
And I think everybody realizes that there's an idea whose time has come.
Yes, it's certainly its time has come, and it's sort of awaited for some time. Tom, let's take this whole debate to the point that everybody is looking at protectionist policies that have been a fallout of the crisis. And there people have the big question, will these hamper the growth of the next 20 years? Do you feel that a country like India would actually get hit even more when protectionist policies come around at its developing stage?
Well, there's nothing wrong at a certain point in development of taking policies to nurture your domestic market. We did that in America. Korea did it. Taiwan did it. The question is not to become addicted to them. Because when you become addicted to them, it becomes another way to slow your people down. You're not competing against the best. Your industries aren't, be able to attract the best talent. So, I think it's finding that right balance between exposing your people overnight to all the ravages and competition of the global market, and making sure you're not falling behind.
As a criteria for growth and inclusive growth, do you think that will remain something that India will take a while to deal with, protectionist policies?
Well, I think, that's a trend which is there in the world, but I think India is well placed in this environment. I think thanks to our demographic dividend, thanks to the fact that we'll be the only young country in an aging world, I think India will play a role, whether it's work done from India for global entities or whether it's Indians going out of the country to work physically in the country. So I think that trend, while there will be protectionism, I think that fundamental trend, I think, is inexorable. So certainly from an Indian perspective, I believe that globalization is a good thing for us.
Sure.
And we should continue to work to make sure that the global channels of business and communication are kept open.
No, but exactly. With your background in technology and Infosys, do you think this is a piece that's going to be short-lived, as it's in the past it's been a flash on the pan, but this time it looks like there's a little more sort of, it's more rooted in political hunger than it has ever been before?
Well,
right?
I'm not really the best judge of that, but I do believe that some of these trends are inexorable, and so they will happen in terms of globalization, because of if you have countries where they're aging, they will need more workers. Now, either those workers will have to physically come there, or the workers will have to work remotely to manufacture products or services.
Sure.
Similarly, if you're aging, you have challenges of pensions and capital, and therefore that capital needs to get the best return. And that best return again will come in a high growth economy like India. So the capital will perforce have to come here to deliver the return. So whatever way you look at it, I think India has both opportunities of people playing a role in the global economy and attracting capital.